Okay, now I'm going to be putting on the actual belt clips. I decided not to do the belt loops because honestly I prefer belt clips. I am using stainless steel, well it's not rivets, they're basically little snaps. Now that little leather piece there I use just to hold the little snap in place while I flip it over. And it's pretty straightforward. You hammer on one side, you have the little housing for the little cap on the other side, and you know it's actually really easy to install something like this. So there you have it. I'm almost done. I'm doing this time lapse just because it'd take forever otherwise. So enjoy. Okay, I've put the clips on. Now I'm installing the first button. One of the flaws with these particular buttons I've been using is the posts are a little bit too long, so I've had to trim those posts. Sometimes I can just cut a couple of notches at the tip and it'll fold over properly. Sometimes I've had to actually grind the tip down a little bit because it's just way too long and it won't fold at all if it's too long like that. They needed, honestly, to provide two posts in the package for different sizes, but they don't. Okay, I'm looking at this case that I just finished, or thought I'd finished. Realize there's two buttons that do not work. This happens sometimes when you're an amateur and you're trying to do buttons. Leather buttons are designed a little differently than regular buttons that you might find for clothing. The posts are oftentimes longer to accommodate different sizes of projects. Like if you want to do two thick pieces of leather versus two thin ones, they give you a longer post that has to be modified if you want to do thinner pieces. So that is the stud, and that was fine. As you can see, it stamped just not without a problem, but the other part, what you call the socket, didn't. In fact, all three of these have problems with the socket because the post was too long. So I literally have to remove them and do it over again. So that's what this video is on, is how to properly adjust the post length for the amount of leather that you have in order to be able to install the button properly. Once that's done, I'm going to clamp onto it with vice grips. And I'm going to take the drill. As I said, this is a metal drill bit, and I'm just going to literally cut the inside of the post out. The button comes right off. I'm going to do the second one the same way. Drill it right out of there. Pops right off. There you go. Remove the metal filings and then remove the tape. Okay, the next thing to cover is how do you determine how long that post should be? See, that post is insanely long. It's actually designed for, well, two very thick pieces of leather. And they make the post intentionally long so that if you have two large pieces of leather, the post will be long enough. But the truth is, I'm only using it for a single piece of leather, and that's not even a particularly thick piece of leather. So that post has to be trimmed down in order to work properly. Otherwise, you get what I showed you in the other video. You get protrusions along the edge that prevent the stud from sliding into the cap or the socket. So I'm going to measure that. You see the distance there is almost a full centimeter. That post is literally a centimeter long. And for the project I'm doing, that post shouldn't be more than half a centimeter long, which should be about 5 millimeters. That's essentially the length I'm shooting for. First thing I'm going to do is I have to determine how wide I want that cap and socket to be. So I'm going to actually push it through the hole. I'm going to put the socket into place, and then I'm going to actually examine the post and see how much it overlaps. You want it to be, it absolutely cannot go beyond the socket or the cap. The cap post, I should say, should not be longer than the socket itself. But I would do it a little bit under the socket just to be on the safe side. So right now it looks like I've got about 2.5 millimeters I have to remove from that post in order to make it the right size. Roughly, as I said, it was a centimeter long. I'm going to take it down to about 5 or 6 millimeter. So actually that's 4 or 5 millimeters I'm going to take off of that post to make it the right size. Okay? So that's the next step. First thing I'm going to do is mark it. Mark your post to make sure that you know how much you have to remove. And then once you get it marked all around like that, then I'll use a Dremel to cut it. And that's the next part of the process. I'm going to clamp onto the head of that cap, the button. This isn't always easy to do. This one happens to be round, so it's a little easier to clamp onto. But sometimes they're regularly shaped and they're not an easy thing to clamp onto. And you can see the Dremel with a metal cutting bit. I'm going to literally cut off the excess of that post. It comes right off of there. And when I'm done, it'll be about 5 or 6 millimeters in length. Okay, the next part of this process, I'm going to take a file and just slightly do the edge there to make sure there's no burrs or anything that'll catch when I slide it through the leather and through the socket piece. Okay, now I've slid the cap button. I put a little piece of leather down first of all so it won't damage the button head, what you might call the cap. And I've slid in through the hole and I've put the socket over the post now. And you'll see that post is almost flush now with that the socket now. Literally, it's a little bit lower, which is good. Now I know it's going to be about the right length. I'm going to use a setter from, I believe it's Tandy Leather. They make good quality setters. And hopefully this setter will do the trick and make a nice uniform, well, it'll punch it down to a uniform shape, which won't interfere with the stud portion of the button. So there you go. I hammer it down against the leather on the flat piece, and you can see there, that's a nice clean punch. Beautiful punch right there. That's just the right length, fits in nicely. I didn't damage the button head, and I now have one button installed. So now I'll do the next one. The next part of this process is to slide my tools in, make sure that everything's in place, and I'm going to actually now try it again and see if these buttons are functional. One sec, let me zoom out a little bit so you can see a little bit better. And now I'm going to go ahead and try it and see if I now have 3 functional buttons, and they all seem to snap in beautifully. It looks like I finally have the buttons working properly. Thank you for watching this video. Join me for the next one where I show how to do the flap edge and the inside lines for the clip holder. Basically all the way around the edge. Now I wanted to comment briefly on the button situation I ran into. It's not uncommon when you buy leather equipment and supplies to run into issues or problems, particularly if you're an amateur. I think experts have a lot of experience. They've been doing it for a long time, so they know how to deal with the little things that that an amateur doesn't. And I think they even take it for granted. So one of the things I've been trying to do is create videos that show techniques for resolving those kind of problems that the experts don't show, because they just assume that everyone knows how to do it or how to fix it. And that's not the case. Like, what do you do with a button when the post is too long? I had to figure it out on my own. And you can't find any video, it seems, that shows you how to do that. So please enjoy these videos, and I hope you learned something. And really, the subscriptions and the likes, I hate to promote myself like that, but it really does help to keep this thing going. So I can continue to make videos of the kind of things you need to know as an amateur that the experts don't always mention. Thank you for watching.